Honestly, you talked about films that were your favorites that were on your list when you were a kid and you felt like you still had to honor them. If I were honoring films like that, The Secret of the Ooze would be on that list, but I have revisited it as an adult, and it should be on no one's favorite film list.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III, a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Virtel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
And I'm Aida Osman. I'm a TV writer and alleged comedian.
Let's get into it. After seeing Everything Everywhere All at Once, a lot of people are saying that it immediately became one of their favorite films. And in honor of that, I thought that Louis and I should, one, finally talk about what our favorite films are, but also we should figure out what criteria goes into deciding something is your favorite film. Because I feel like you agree with me that favorite film means favorite film. You know, we're not sitting here saying these are the best films ever made.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't mean they're the best written, doesn't mean they like are technically the best, have like maybe our favorite performances also might be in movies that aren't in our favorite films. I feel like when people try and talk about their favorite films, they get stuck in sort of like, well, I should say something that I feel like is going to make me look smart.
Sure, there's some of that. I mean, like, it is this conflict to me because there are movies I've seen 7,000 times, and then there are movies that I think are amazing that I've seen literally one time and probably wouldn't even watch again, but I think those movies deserve credit too. So to calibrate where these belong in the ranking system of favorite movies is actually quite vexing to me. Also, I just want to say in general, I don't know if this is like particularly a male-oriented. I feel like women are likelier to reject ranking. I feel like at least on Twitter, I'll see people being like, I'm sick of having to pick my top 10 from women critics especially. So what we're doing right now might be one, male-oriented, or two, gay male-oriented. Nobody likes ranking shit more than gay men. Nobody. But here's the thing, and this is another thing I'm weighing. I have long had a list of favorite movies. Like, if you asked me right off the bat, it's always going to be Rear Window. It's always going to be Clue. It's always going to be Airplane. But that's what I would have said in high school, too. And I wonder if keeping those as my favorite is more honoring a past version of myself than it is true to the current moment. Even though I've seen Clue 500,000 times, so how could it not be one of my favorite movies? Anyway, I'm sorry to write a poem about this. We can just get into the movies, but...
Well, so starting with Clue for you, that's the movie you've seen the most. And
I have maybe seen Clue more than I have seen like a picture of Bugs Bunny. I think it is the piece of media I have seen most times.
Whereas I think everyone who listens to this podcast knows that Bring It On is the movie that I've seen the most.
Oh, correct. Yes.
Yeah,
it would be it would be weird if you told me Bring It On was not in your top 3. It'd be weird.
Yeah. It's a movie that I feel like I immediately took to. It came out in August 2000. That is the summer right before I started high school. So it was sort of one of the last films I saw with middle school friends before I went to like an all boys school, and so I wouldn't see like any of my girlfriends from like middle school anymore. And it just sort of like invigorated me. Like I was just sort of like really jazzed on this movie, and I feel like I saw it every weekend for like the next 2 months.
Also, that movie, not only is it super funny, it is very attitudinal. You know, it's like it's a movie that all the characters are kind of just aligned in the level of sauciness they bring, really. And I feel like Clueless is similar in that regard. And to me, this has always been where Mean Girls lacks a little bit. Like certain characters, bring a lot of personality, and other ones like fall under are sort of typical high school characters. So to me, Clueless and Bring It On are kind of in a league of their own in this world.
Aaron Samuels is kind of lame.
Right. Not a dynamic character. It couldn't have been anybody.
Yeah. And I would also say that Bring It On is from that specific era that we grew up with, where most of the stars of the teen TV shows we were watching were in movies.
Right.
So, like,
you could
I'm
expect
loving
that.
Elijah Dushku in this because, like, I watched her on Buffy, you know? And I feel like maybe, like, 80s and sort of, like, early 90s teen movies, like, the people were, like, finding actors,
Yeah.
you know, to become movie stars. And we, like, late 90s, specifically, like, 2000s teen movies were, who's on a popular teen show already? We'll just put them in a movie.
Well, I think that also pertains to a movie that would be on both of our lists. Yours would likely be the sequel, and mine's the original, Scream, which is,
Yes.
Let's take Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox, two people we think we know, throw them in this circumstance, and their humor's even more biting now. Their angst is even more palpable, and, you know, we get one of the funniest, raddest movies of that decade.
Yeah, I always go back and forth with Scream versus Scream 2 because that is what I meant when I started out saying that, like, favorite film versus best film, right? I can find reasons that Scream is a better made film than the sequel, but they're sort of on par with me in quality.
Right. Well, also, I do think if you like the first one, it would be rare you didn't like the second one. You know, so I like. Yeah, it's not so much that one is good and one isn't. It's just like you're right. They're pretty level pegging. Like, so it's almost random which one you would like more.
And I would also say that Scream 2 has quite a few sequences that I feel are the scariest moments in the series in general.
Sure.
That sort of top, like number one has that, you know, obviously the iconic Drew Barrymore opening. But, you know, like Scream 2 has a bunch of, like, really thrilling chase scenes, which I feel like Scream 5 was missing.
Right. No, I didn't feel
there
like
were no
they
chase scenes.
They didn't sustain many scares in Scream 5, unfortunately. Like the one, and also it's like that movie had the same problem as Halloween Kills, where it's like, wait, Ghostface is just killing people, like, outside. Or like this, he would be way more furtive.
In the middle of the day.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. But okay, so Scream we can both agree on. Another thing I have trouble, I brought up Rear Window earlier. Now that's talk about suspense, obviously, by the master of suspense, Hitchcock. But I think for me, the reason Rear Window will always be in my top three is, one, it's one of the first movies I came to when getting into older movies, so it feels just important to me personally. But two, I really think Rear Window is the number one, like, guaranteed gateway drug into classic cinema if you're looking to get into it. And by that I mean, for one thing, you watch it, it could only be an old movie. You're sitting there watching Jimmy Stewart look out his window at this clear set. This apartment complex is obviously a set. They have just a couple other characters in the movie, Grace Kelly and Thelma Ritter, and their relationships are so real, and the suspense is something everybody can relate to because everybody has been curious about the existence of a stranger before. And, you know, nowadays we obviously have lots of ways to keep tabs on strangers without them knowing, but this is sort of the beginning of what does it mean to be a voyeur, whatever. And it is successfully scary too. So, but because of the quaint nature of it, because of the old-fashioned nature of it, you as the viewer are like, I've got to watch more movies like this. So you end up watching all these Hitchcock movies. You end up watching, you know, the non-Hitchcock movies that feel like Hitchcock movies, and I mean like Gaslight and movies like that.
So you still hate Vertigo, right?
Well, I'll say this. I think it's slow at times, but that role could only be Jimmy Stewart, because I think it would almost not be, I hate using this word, likable, but he has that palpable humanity and just consideration in everything he does. It makes him seem less like a erotic thriller, anger overrun dude.
I didn't have a Hitchcock on my list when we, you know, came up with our list for this episode, but obviously Hitchcock's one of my favorite directors, and I feel like Rear Window is a film that I love. If I'm sitting down to watch a Hitchcock film, it might be Vertigo before that, Psycho, definitely Rope, but I feel like I really fucking love Strangers on a Train.
Oh, yeah. Well, also, Strangers on a Train, which I was referenced very cleverly in an episode of Modern Family once, that just sprang to mind. Also, the thing with Strangers on a Train is, why couldn't that happen? You know,
Yeah.
you could almost just see two guys being like, let's exchange dirty business and see how it works out. Have you ever seen Throw Mom Up from the Train, which is based
Of course.
on it?
Yes.
One of the great supporting actress nominations, Anne Ramsey. Just a shocking comedy performance.
But if we're talking old movies that, you know, sort of like get you into other classic films, my list includes Double Indemnity, which is just crackles from the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those films like it sort of sets the pace for what the noir genre should be, but it also starts out with so many elements that become movie tropes and cliches, but like it's done excellently here. Like even starting with the voiceover, you know?
Oh yeah.
And like showing you like what's gonna happen at the end before you flash back. And honestly, Fred MacMurray is an amazing actor, and I love him and Barbara Stanwyck in this film. And I doubt that many Keep It listeners have seen his Absent-Minded Professor films, but it's just funny seeing him, you know, in like shit like that, and then watching Double Indemnity, and I have to feel like that's what audiences were getting when they first went to see this movie. Like they were both playing against type in this film.
Also, he represents lantern jaw culture, and God knows I need him. So there we are. The thing also about Barbara Stanwyck, you know, nowadays it feels like people only remember things if they have quote unquote iconic imagery associated with them. You know, if you get like the dorm room poster with Audrey Hepburn on it, or you remember the pants that Katharine Hepburn wore. And Barbara Stanwyck, maybe even within the past 20 years, has sort of faded beyond recognition. Like people don't take the time to recognize that she was one of the most like whiz-bang, eye-popping comedy icons of her time, and a dramatic actor too. But she really is rewarding to revisit. And if you go and watch her, Ball of Fire is a movie in which she gives an amazing performance. I absolutely fucking hate Gary Cooper in that movie, but she is amazing. Sorry, Wrong Number. There's a lot of great performances from her.
She's also very good in The Colbys.
Oh my God! I love her, like The Big Valley, like her like TV renaissance that she had later on too.
Yeah, Dynasty and The Colbys, and she was in just the first season of The Colbys too, and then she left the show because she was like, "The fuck am I doing?" Yep. But she's really sort of fun in that first throwback season. I feel like she is. Even if people can't really picture like her face and her films, her iconic thing that's probably still on like film students' walls is the grocery store scene from Double Indemnity, where she's wearing the heavy shades. And that's probably also part of it. Like the shades are so iconic in the scene, but you know, like you can't see her eyes in it, so you don't really have like a face so much as you have the sunglasses, the hair.
Right. And speaking of movies from sort of around that time, All About Eve, definitely one of my favorite movies. And I have to say, here's the reason why. It's actually rare you get a movie that is from beginning to end witty. It's a
perfect script, and it's also so fucking funny.
Oh my God. Please. Bette Davis is like laying people out left and right. Like, and also the one-liners she's throwing away. It's not just somebody who's, you know, it's not like insult comedy the entire time. It's the jadedness with which she dispenses these jokes. And of course, Addison DeWitt, one of the great Best Supporting Actor winners, George Sanders, is fabulous as a drama critic. And by the way, how many times do we get even a believable critic in a movie? It's just that's not something you really see.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, they don't build statues of them, so
right. Nice work.
Another movie from that era is Written on the Wind, which is my favorite Cirque film and also my favorite melodrama. We've talked about this on the podcast before. I mean, a film that has a man being danced to death.
Right, by Dorothy Malone. That's the Best Supporting Actress winner in 56. It also, people forget that Robert Stack, who I think most people now know as the host of Unsolved Mysteries, the original run, used to be a dramatic actor, and in this movie, he's palling around with Rock Hudson.
Yeah, and I love the Rock Hudson era of him in dramatic roles too. Before he was in Pillow Talk and all that.
Let me say something about Pillow Talk, which is not one of my favorite movies. It does have Thelma Ritter from All About Eve giving a great drunk performance. There is a joke in that movie at the expense of some woman, and it's about her looks, that is so fucking mean, it ruins the entire movie for me. As in, I'm surprised more people don't talk about it. And that Doris Day would be in that movie. Saint Doris Day. You know, it's a good movie with her, Teacher's Pet from the year before. It's her, one of Clark Gable's last movies, and Gig Young, who would later win an Oscar for They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which is in my top 5 favorite movies, which... God, I'm sure I've brought up this movie 10,000 times. He brought it up to Jane Fonda herself. But it's Jane Fonda's best movie and performance, I think, because I think maybe no one in the history of movies has done anger better than Jane Fonda. Like, to perform cynicism in a role, it was this hardened bitch character. The whole movie's about dance marathons during the Depression where people would dance for days on end. And the one who survived at the end of it, this is like something they would do on a YouTube channel now, would get like a cash prize, and everybody else would simply perish and win nothing. But it is a harrowing movie. Does not get bleaker than that movie. Talk about a movie you can barely watch 2 times, but it looks fabulous. And it's also a Sidney Pollack movie. And let me tell you something. Obviously, I love Tootsie, but he's made some movies I don't like Out of Africa. So it's crazy that he brought the level of power he did in this movie.
Actually, no, I would agree with that. I was looking through Sidney Pollack's filmography, and I was like, not a lot of faves.
No, wait, which ones are you glancing at? Which ones are you glancing at?
I mean, just like Out of Africa is boring to me.
It's so boring. I can't believe that's a Best Picture winner. I can't believe it.
Have you seen Absence of Malice?
Oh, I sure have. That's
Sally Field and
yes.
Paul Newman. It is truly one of the wackiest sort of like neo-noir thrillers from like the early 80s. It's so bad. And Sally
also,
Field
she's awful at her job. Like Sally
Field
Field
is awful at her job. She's a reporter. She starts fucking Paul Newman immediately. She's always running around smoking a cigarette and stressed out at work. And I think she is even not proud of that performance.
Maybe. I know, that also has Melinda Dillon in it, who you probably know as the mom from A Christmas Story. She's in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, too. She gives a good, very brief performance, but I wouldn't even seek out the movie for that reason. But speaking of Meryl Streep in Out of Africa, I just rewatched a movie I have long considered one of my favorites over the weekend, Sophie's Choice. Allow me to confirm that it fucking rules. I have heard people before say it's too long, it's ponderous. I totally disagree. It's like Rear Window. It's about really 3 people and their friendship. And even though it has a reputation for being super dour, and obviously it is dour, it goes into a very trauma-based place talking about the Holocaust. If you don't know what Sophie's Choice is, oh my God, how are you listening to this podcast? But anyway, what it really is a hangout movie. It's Meryl Streep, Peter McNichol, who is fabulous, and Kevin Kline, who is scary and astounding, building a friendship. And it's one of those movies, like, I would compare it to maybe like An Education or The Great Gatsby, where somebody is getting their life through a new and unexpected relationship, or unexpected relationships. It's about like friendship as adventure, etc. So, God, I really recommend it for that reason. And Meryl's performance, I'm glad it has the stature it has. It is one of the best performances ever.
Honestly, speaking of Meryl, to jump back to pandemic films that I watched and like discovered for the first time, I need to watch this movie a few more times to see if it's going to actually hold up in my heart as one of my favorites. But man, I fucking love Defending Your Life. I watched it for the first time during the pandemic, and I was moved by that film, just like in a way that I hadn't been moved by a film in quite some time.
I feel like that movie comes up a lot among writers, and I feel like I'm specifically our friend Jordan. That's one of his favorite movies. But
I mean, speaking of All About Eve, it's
right.
Albert Brooks. The script it's giving wit from start to finish. It's so fucking funny.
And also just like a concept that sees itself through. Like, okay, here we are. The person dies. We're in this holding pattern zone where they're figuring out what's going to happen in the afterlife. He meets somebody in the afterlife. And also you get a performance from the eternal living legend Lee Grant as one of the lawyers deciding what will happen to this person.
I don't know if Albert Brooks needs more recognition. I'm sure he has enough recognition. But, man, he's just a really great director.
When he got snubbed for Drive, that surprised me. I thought that was a memorable performance. And also a movie that I think is even getting better with time. And it's standing out from all the other movies around it around the time. Yeah.
It's weird because I feel like it had such a big impact when it came out. But then also I feel like the discussion around Drive as a movie sort of faded away.
Yeah,
It was really more about the soundtrack.
Oh, God, that song is so hypnotic and good. By College, is it called
Yeah.
Real Hero? Yeah. Did I forget any other favorite movies of mine? Also, Airplane is one of my favorite movies. I love how deadpan the humor is played throughout that movie. I obviously love the quantity of jokes in that movie. And what is shocking about Airplane, and that people, I think, forget to talk about, is much of the plot, characters, and dialogue is directly lifted from a 1957 movie called 0 Hour, and then comedy is inserted around it, which is... It's because like the studio had access to that or owned that movie, so they could use the material from it. And what a mysterious way to approach a comedy. Just take like a straight up serious movie and be like, actually, if we add a few moments here and there, it turns into this first thing.
But if we're talking about like early career films that are just like fucking magnificent, the original Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my favorites. I love watching that film. It's great too because it's a horror film and it's that, feels scary still because it's made on such like a shoestring budget.
Right. I love the scrappiness of it. Yeah. And just Heather Langenkamp's performance. This is just a dream. It isn't real. Like the screaming is so scary.
And also speaking of like horror-esque films, I don't really know if this is a horror film so much as like a action film, but Jurassic Park. The way that Jurassic Park had like this grip on me, it had a fucking chokehold on me as a kid. I was obsessed with Jurassic Park. I actually think it's probably the film that I've seen the second amount of times after Bring It On, because when Jurassic Park came out, the way that my parents would just drop me off at the movies by myself because I had to see this movie again and again and again. Spielberg's like Spielberg magic has never been more evident in a movie than this one for me. I wasn't like an E.T. person as a kid, probably because we're like 86. I feel like people born slightly earlier than us like really love E.T., but E.T. never really did it for me. Jurassic Park fucking does it for me. And the way that everything in this movie looks so fucking realistic in 2022.
Right. Oh, totally. Also, I will say about E.T. quickly. That movie does nail the feeling of the suburbs better than most movies ever do. I will give it that. But about Jurassic Park, I mean, that's a movie to me that's like The Devil Wears Prada or something, where once it comes on, what are you supposed to do? Look away? Like you have to simply be there and experience the whole thing. Also, that movie, I guess, created like a space in like the Fontanelles on Baby Brains where now they just are obsessed with dinosaurs. Like that didn't exist before.
I was obsessed with dinosaurs. The way that my bedroom as a kid was like dinosaurs and Ghostbusters shit.
Yeah. Oh, I actually did have a lot of Ghostbusters toys.
Yeah.
I had all the action figures, even an Annie Potts action figure, which Mom and Dad, do you regret it now? Because look what happened.
And my thing is that like I enjoy Ghostbusters, and that's a movie that I will always watch when it's on TV. Ghostbusters 2, which I feel like I enjoy slightly more just because when I was a kid, the Vigo slime shit was funny to me.
Very
Nickelodeon. Cool as a kid. But like Ghostbusters for me feels like one of those films that I wouldn't even put it in my like top 30 of favorite films ever, either of them, but I was obsessed with Ghostbusters shit as a kid, and I feel like that was the power of 80s advertising and consumerism.
Oh, absolutely. No, I don't think I knew anybody who didn't have Ghostbusters toys. And I want to say
Or
about
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys.
Oh, I had fucking all of them. Every time I go to like a gay warehouse party that's in some like laser lit underground zone, I feel like I'm in the skate park
Secret
from
of the
Teenage Mutant
Ooze.
Ninja Turtles. Like in the first one,
Oh,
where,
the first
like,
one.
where like Danny hangs out and smokes with all his cool friends. I was like, shit,
Yeah.
this is what being cool is. And now I live that and pay $20 to go meet other men in mesh shirts.
Honestly, you talked about films that were your favorites that were on your list when you were a kid and you felt like you still had to honor them. If I were honoring films like that, Secret of the Ooze would be on that list, but I have revisited it as an adult, and it should be on no one's favorite film list.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember having the humbling experience of watching the movie Superstar again, the Molly Shannon movie based on Mary Catherine Gallagher from SNL. In college, I watched it with other people. Grim experience. I remember being like, oh, you won't believe this line and this line. Those lines still existed and nothing else. Elaine Hendricks, I honor you, though. Yeah.
I feel like one of my big things with like my favorite films are sort of like I tap into directors that I feel like everyone loves, but you know, like my favorite film ends up being like one of the like weirder films in their filmography. Like I love the Coen brothers. I think, you know, Burn After Reading is my favorite Coen brothers film.
I think that's a sophisticated choice, yeah.
I just think the casting is such an interesting cast for them. I think the addition of like Brad Pitt, Elizabeth Marvel, like Tilda Swinton in this cast with their usuals like Frances McDormand and George Clooney, like I feel like that cast is just really fucking good, and I wish that we would see more. I wish we would see more inventive casts like that in films, you know?
I think dynamite casting is a key to keeping a favorite film because you want to be reunited with that exact group of people when you're going to sit down with it. And I think Adam's Family Values, this comes up on gay Twitter all the time, perfectly cast. But also, maybe the most perfectly cast movie of the past 25 years, come on now, Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, I mean, that I forgot to put that on my list. I think you
that's
did
got to
too.
be a you
I
movie.
fucking
Yeah,
loved.
right.
I love Talented fucking Mr. Ripley. So
I
much
think
that
I would
add
put
a fucking in there. Talented fucking Mr. Ripley. I love. I mean, talk about vibes though.
Yeah. Oh, no, right. Sinister. We're all rich, but we're all full of intrigue and pretension, but also depth of character. So artificiality plus depth. I love that mix.
Yeah. But in that vein of like the Coens in that one, I put like I was trying to think of a Scorsese film that is like in my fave, and I really think it's The Age of Innocence.
Winona wowed me in that one. I have to say I'm a bit of a doubter when it comes to Winona Ryder, and that performance is airtight. Michelle,
I'm
of
a
course,
Michelle
is
girl.
absolutely serving. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a Michelle girl, and Daniel Day-Lewis is like sexy in this film.
Sexy. Not my favorite performance of his. It's always weird when you watch a movie of his and realize he actually doesn't nail it 100% of the time. If you watched The Crucible recently, overdone.
Why would I watch The Crucible?
I know. Don't do that.
To wrap this up, I think we've both talked about how Jackie Brown is sort of like Tarantino's underrated classic, but I feel like people online have started to figure that out.
Oh, sure. And also the only scene where somebody is just, they scream the name Lewis several times, so I have to honor that.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Batman Returns, you know, superhero films. That is sort of like the nadir for me. And I think that we could get something weird like that again from my favorite director, Almodovar. Also, All About My Mother is on this list because it's iconic and soapy and just sort of like one of his most beautiful films ever. He was one of those directors that people asked, like, what do you think of superhero films? And he wasn't a director who was like, I hate them. He was like, I don't think they're sexy enough, you know, and there's too much like studio interference. And he said that he would love to do like something with Batgirl. And then Penelope Cruz was asked what she thought about him saying that. And she was like, if Almodovar does Batgirl, I need to be the lead. I need to be in it. And honestly, a weird, wacky superhero movie like the way Batman Returns is with Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito and like the twistedness of that. Imagine Almodovar doing like Batgirl with Penelope Cruz.
That does sound heavenly. I also just want to give my respect to the fact that he didn't just criticize superhero movies, offered to solve. He's like,
Yes.
what if it had this? Because by the way, that is not the instinct I have. If you catch me on the wrong day, I'm like, here are the 50 things I don't like about them. So.
I think we exhausted all our favorite films. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously we've had a ton more, but
Right. I just want to say quickly about Clue. I did end up rewatching it recently, and I am shocked to say I was laughing at newer and different things. Like the way Mr. Green picked, that'd be Michael McKean, is telling the cops who showed up to investigate, this mansion of murders. His line readings as this closeted agent, very funny. So check out Michael McKean.
Come with me. I'll show you the dining room, or the kitchen, or the ballroom.
I can't believe I also just glossed over Heathers, which is at the top of my list. And Clue reminded me of that. I've rewatched it, and it is slow.
I think it's slow. I also think it's like jokes that are repeated, which gets sluggish.
But the jokes in that movie that hit are some of the, not just funniest, but some of the like harshest jokes that I think have ever been in a film. Like, there are lines in Heathers that would not fly anywhere today in a film.
Did you hear? School's canceled today because Kurt and Ram killed themselves in a repressed homosexual suicide pact.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a movie about cruelty, yeah.
Yeah. The cruelty, but also just the jokes about, weight in it, the jokes about suicide. It's just you can't satirize things like that today in the way that you were in a film like that, just because of censors and the way that people are sensitive to jokes. You can't do comedy anymore, Louis. People are too sensitive.
What was that, Bill Maher? Yeah.